Hello, welcome to another episode of Unconditioned Mind. Unconditioned Mind is part of Awakened, an initiative that has started to wake people up to their true selves so that they function according to their authentic power. And today we're talking about diversity and inclusion, a topic that has been around for a while, but very little progress is being made. And today, my guest is Chule Gobodo, who is a specialist in this field. So I'm really excited about our interview today and what we're going to discuss. And maybe, Chule, you can start by just introducing yourself and just telling us what you do.
All right, my name is Chule Gobodo. I am co-founder of Rainbow Conscious Creatives, which is a diversity, equity, access, and a belonging storytelling agency with the aim to create psychologically safe spaces for every kind of body using the power of storytelling and Ubuntu.
Wow, that sounds exciting. Just define this whole issue of diversity and inclusion. What is that? What is that about?
What it is that as human beings, we are hardwired for connection. We're hardwired to create spaces of belonging. And so when belonging is absent, we feel that as exclusion, we feel that as racism, sexism, all the isms that you can think of. And so the goal of diversity, equity, access, and inclusion is belonging. That is the goal that we are moving towards. We like to say at Rainbow, really what we're moving towards is our authentic selves, which is a self that is connected not just to other human beings, but to all that is, which is at the center point of what Ubuntu thinking and Ubuntu philosophy is. And so for us, when we got into the space, we realized that a lot of the time we discard or disregard the fact that as African people, we've been practicing inclusion actually. It's just that we called it by another name, which is Ubuntu. And because we are having to work through a lot of self-worth as African people, we don't understand that we have such a huge gift that we can give the world by tapping into our own modalities of thinking.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, in fact, that leads me to talk about identity, because my focus is really more around the workspace, because I think that is where most people lose their identity. Everybody. I don't think it just applies to those that we perceive as disadvantaged, like women, like Black people, like LGBTQ people, but everybody. We get into the workspace, we find a certain culture, and we have to fit into that culture. And I find that for us to fit in, we end up abandoning ourselves, opting for that so that we fit in. So let's just talk about identity. Can you just unpack identity for us?
So the issue is that we've been conditioned to allow, what does Abraham Hicks say? We're so accustomed to our own disempowerment that we believe others or outside forces must identify us. And so we move through the world reactive instead of within our own empowerment. Because the reason why we lose our identity or we fold ourselves to accommodate the culture that we find ourselves in, whether it's our African culture or the culture at schools or the culture in the workplace, is because we're so conditioned to ignore ourselves. We are brought up to ignore ourselves. If you have the misfortune of being a sensitive child, that gets taught out of you bit by bit. You can't say that, I've, for example, have been told that I have the tongue of a wasp, that every time I open my mouth, sting people with the words that I say. Whereas as a child, I thought I was just sharing what I'm observing. But then that taught me, sharing what I'm observing is wrong. Being truthful is wrong. Myself is not safe because it meets resistance if it's not packaged in the way that benefits in inverted commas, by the way, because as we show up more authentically, we expand and grow the culture and help the culture evolve, which is what we're here for as human beings. We're not here to keep the status quo as is. We're here to expand it. We're here to enrich it. We're here to make it more colorful and to gift that enriched experience of ourselves to other people. And so before we can start looking for identity anywhere else, we have to understand, where have we given parts of ourselves and our identity away? Where have we given our power away? Where have we given permission slips to people that did not deserve those permission slips to say, you can define me, you can say this is what and who I am allowed to be when I'm around you in particular. And so this is something we had to learn the hard way on a personal and on a business level, because the beauty of owning a business is that all your wounds, all your self-worth things, they come out clear as day in the way you price your business, your willingness to market yourself, your ability to speak to like a CEO, for example. I remember when I was doing a sales course and they said, you need to go and speak to the CEO. I was like, I'd rather die. No way am I going to go speak to a whole CEO of a company. And I had to look back and go, why is this such a triggering thing for me? Because I see the CEO of a company as someone who has more value than me. I don't see that I have value to offer this big CEO. That's why I struggle to articulate what my business is about. That's why I struggle to price in the way that I deserve. And so as I started to reclaim my own identity, and the beauty of leaning into African cosmology has given me so much confidence. It's opened my eyes to the depth, first of all, of our intelligence, to the fact that we have ancient technology as something that we can lean on and operationalize within our businesses. We have literally operationalized Ubuntu. And not in words. We went to wisdom keepers and asked them, how do we operationalize Ubuntu within our business? And we were told, not just told, but we had to do an incarnation objective reading, which is something that midwives back in the day in our African culture used to do when a child gets born, because a midwife was also the spiritual leader of a community. And so they'd say, this child was born on this day. This is what was happening in the community at that time. This is the blueprint this child is coming with. How are we as a community going to support this child to actualize and build the house that they want to gift this community with? And so, we have the job of taking back our power in the places that we have abandoned ourselves in, and remember our own sovereignty so that we can show up in our true identity.
And our authentic selves.
Authentic selves, exactly.
Okay, so, if we look at Africans, for instance, who had been through colonialization, racism, and all of that, and women who have gone through sexism, patriarchy, and all of that, where who we are has been defined by others, and in whatever space we're in, we're trying to fit into the stereotype of a black person and the stereotype of a woman, for instance. Then how do we then reclaim our identity as those people and be able to bring our authentic selves into the workspace, at home, in society? Because I really just believe that you can never contribute fully to anything or reach your full potential if you are not functioning from your true self. Let's just focus on Black people and women and how they've opted for self-abandonment, for safety and security, for acceptance. You're talking about access and belonging. These things are important to us. So we study the situation and we opt for self-abandonment so that we can belong, so that we can be accepted.
It starts with realizing that you have abandoned yourself, because a lot of the time it's packaged as this is the norm. It's normal to feel like this at work. It's normal to feel like this in a marriage. It's normal to feel like this in society. All of us have to suffer. All of us have to struggle. All of us have to do fill in the blank. So it starts with having a realization that this is abnormal. It's abnormal to have your heart beating in your throat every day. This is not normal. It's not a symptom of my weakness, that I'm unable to assimilate into this and fold myself enough. You know, the reason why we're seeing such a high rate of mental health risks and mental health crisis, the reason why we're having this crisis is because our souls are no longer willing to participate in inauthenticity. Our souls are giving us alarm bells to say we are unwilling to fold ourselves any longer. And this is actually a gift. The high levels of anxiety is a gift to say that we've been operating in an abnormal manner, and we need to look at ways that benefit our mental hygiene, not strip it of its strength and its resilience. And so I'd say step number one is realizing that this is abnormal and that you are worth the work. A lot of the time, or for me, I struggled with ukuzonqena. I was lazy towards myself. I was willing to move heaven and earth for everyone else. I was not sleep, not this, not that. If it was for a client, it's not even a question. But when it came to giving myself that same energy, I couldn't even fathom that scenario. You know, when in 2020, everything happened as it happened. At the time, we had shot, a pilot for a client and given literally our absolute all, our absolute all, and it fell apart. Like the whole thing just fell apart. And I just remember feeling so terrible that I'd failed this person. And the Lord said to me, would you give yourself this much energy? Would you have this much zest and zeal and feel this terrible towards yourself if you had failed yourself in this way? And I was like, nope, I wouldn't even know that I'd failed myself. I didn't even know that's a possible thing. And the Lord said to me, give yourself the same energy and zeal that you so willingly gift other people. How about you give that to yourself? And that's when I started conversations with the love activists to say, let me work on me. Let me create a sacred space of healing for myself, a space where I'm accountable to myself, and remove all the barriers that are blocking my North Star, my true self, from shining through. And having self-love as a goal, I think it was my biggest gift, because it forced me to remove all the things that do not serve me. It taught me how to say no. It taught me to have boundaries, because I didn't have boundaries before. It taught me to say, here and no further. I'm unwilling to put myself in this in danger. I'd heard of reparenting, for example, and we've all heard of reparenting. And I thought that's like, take myself out on a play date and it's cute. But when I really went into, or I did another course with Ugogo Sophia called Healing the Ancestral Inner Child. So healing the inner child of your ancestors on your all four bloodlines, 5 generations this way. I realized, self love and reparenting is about discipline, because I don't let Malibongwe sleep at 11 p.m. because I understand that rest is important for her development. I don't let her eat sweets until because I am very cognizant of the damage that malnutrition can do. So when I'm reparenting, I have to implore that discipline, because that discipline says, I love you so much that I won't allow you to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And so that, I think, is how we start to navigate, by going inwards first. And it's something that I've just realized now, that Ubuntu, because we're interconnected, interrelated, and interdependent on all that is about creating inner Ubuntu, creating that unity, bringing back those fragmented self so that you can benefit from you.
So when we get to the workplace, then I see a situation, for instance, where the workspace has a culture, and that culture is very masculine, very competitive, very aggressive, very demanding. It's about domination. It's about, I'm your boss, and therefore I know it all, and you have to do whatever I say. And that's why we're talking about so much stress, anxiety, depression. People are living literally on depression and anxiety medication for them to survive in those spaces. And when it comes to Black people and women, for instance, that's where they opt for this self-abandonment so that they can feel. If I start with women, they come into this masculine space, and their success is measured by how much they embrace this masculine energy, so that they abandon their feminine energy. And that's why we talk about women not supporting one another, because the masculine energy doesn't care, right? And for you to be considered successful, you have to dig deep and find that masculine energy, as we know that we have both masculine and feminine energy. And therefore, unlike a home where there's a mother and a father, for instance, you find that balance, because both masculine and feminine energies are allowed in the workspace. I realized that the feminine energy is not allowed, because it's considered weak, it's considered inferior, it's considered sensitive and emotional and all of that. And that cannot be allowed, because we've got targets, we've got bottom line, we've got all of these things. So how do we then, in this whole sphere of access and belonging and all of that, when we only allow one energy and we don't allow the feminine energy, how are we going to find this balance where women can authentically be themselves and men can authentically be themselves? For instance, gay men are considered weak and too feminine. And so they are also, attacked and harassed and so on, because they have to be men and they are looked down upon because they tap more onto their feminine energy, for instance. So how do we deal with this problem of people not being allowed to bring their true selves to the workplace?
The reason why people aren't allowed to bring, and this is something people aren't aware of, is that, or we don't consider that, for example, patriarchy or a culture of patriarchy says no one, including those that look like they're benefiting from patriarchy, right? If we say the beneficiaries of patriarchy are straight, white, Christian men, they too are not allowed to move in a way that is authentic as well. The jailer and the jailed are both in jail. And so because a lot of the time we are operating from a place of scarcity or scarcity economics, and our lizard brain is the one that's in the forefront, who is always looking for lack and attack, things that are going to kill us. Our lizard brain is the thing that kept us alive in the wild. It's a thing that said, Chule ate that new fruit that we had not seen before, and now she died. And so all new things, whatever thing it is that is new, as we will attack and protect ourselves from, right? So this orientation of belonging is a new thing. It feels like a threat because we've been able to operate in this jail. We know what this jail feels like, looks like. We know the structure. We know what to expect. We know how to resist it and what it's going to give us back. And so first of all, the prison of seeing things just as scarcity, there's not enough space. If we bring more women, this is what's going to happen. This is how we're going to lose out. Change creates scarcity for fill in the blanks. We then move from a place of armored, where we come with armor wherever we go. But what we don't realize is that it's not just in particular spheres. Even our idea of what success is needs to change, because a lot of it is based on money, right? Or the bottom line, and there's nothing wrong with money. It's just that if money is the only barometer of success, then it creates those spaces of self-abandonment. Then I'm unwilling to jeopardize where I am because of the money that I am receiving. And thank goodness for the generation of workers that's coming up now, because they have expanded their view of what success looks like for them, and because they are more sensitive than we are. When, for example, Fees Must Fall was unfolding, my generation sat back and went, "You're allowed to just tell people you're dissatisfied and do something about it?" It blew our minds, because we were so used and so accustomed to just suck it up. Just you and your African hair is not allowed here, and so you must relax it. Like, there's no two ways about it. But change cannot come if we continue to allow ourselves to be abandoned. So thank goodness for this new wave of workers who are saying, who choose jobs based on the culture. Literally, these young people are like, no, I'm not willing to come into a culture that is toxic. What is your work culture like here? I want to know before I make a decision. And because they are demanding more space is then being created, So I go back to, as long as we tolerate the discomfort of not belonging, we also are making the businesses shrink. We are making the businesses smaller. They're losing out on all the incredible gifts we have to offer, because we're spending so much of our energy trying to protect and armor and deflect. And, a big thing that feminine energy brings in a man or a woman is creativity and innovation. And we're always crying about, we need more innovation in this, we need more creativity in this. It will not come if people are not allowed to bring their integrated selves to work. So you're sitting with all these beautiful ideas, but I'm not going to say that because I don't even see the worth in the idea that I have, right?
Because I don't see the worth in myself.
I don't see the worth in myself. And so the feminine energy is bringing the solutions, but the masculine energy is so overextended because it's being the only one allowed to express itself, that all it can do is be paranoid and look for safety, because of its fact that it doesn't have the feminine to lean into. And now it's overextended and showing up as the immature or false masculine.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at Black people and women, for instance, they said that they want a seat at the table and they want a piece of the pie. And now they are in these spaces, they have the piece of the pie, they have a seat at the table. But because of this self-abandonment, because they can't bring their true selves to the table, I just feel that how can they contribute fully when they're bringing half of themselves. Who wants a piece of the pie? What we want is to expand the pie. What we want is to build and create more pies so that all those who are outside the economy, can also come in. And I really feel that we need to address this issue, because as long as we don't allow people to bring their true selves, their full creativity, we cannot expand this pie. As we are saying, this fear of lack, right? Everybody just fighting over this little pie. But if we allowed people to be themselves, Black people to bring their own creativity, and I'd like to tap more and more into this African, what did you call it? Cosmology. Because I can sense Africans really trying to redefine themselves and find their true selves, their true Africanness, because then we can tap into the creativity of the African that has not been allowed all along. And women also, we can tap into the true creativity of women who have not been allowed to bring their true selves, which is why we're talking about an economy that is not growing, that is not expanding. So everybody is losing out. The company is losing out. The family is losing out. The nation is losing out. And we have more violence, more crime, because people are excluded, because those who are already in are closing everybody out, and they are not even expanding this pie because they're just fighting over the little piece of the pie that everybody can share.
The economics of scarcity is so pervasive, and we don't understand how dangerous it is, right? The economics of scarcity allows you to pollute the ocean. It allows you to make decisions from this real visceral fear of, I'm gonna be dead. If I don't have 10 billion, I'm gonna die. And so I'm willing to employ children to come and work in my factory. I'm willing to create an economy built on human trafficking because of the economy of scarcity. Abraham Hicks said something so powerful the other day. They were like, how do you guys think an economy expands? Do you think aliens come and drop off a bag of money from somewhere? No, the economy expands as you expand, as you create and give more into the economy. That's how the economy actually grows, right? We've all heard the stats that if 50% of women were in leadership positions worldwide, that the global economy would stand to make $28 trillion more than it does right now, because women replenish an economy with their spending. They're spending in the local groceries, school fees. Local businesses benefit when women have money in their hands. And so businesses don't even see that connect, that as I am trying to make this Black woman in my business shrink, I'm shrinking the economy. Because we are interconnected, interrelated, and interdependent on each other, I'm shrinking her, I'm shrinking me.
Exactly.
When I make space for her, I make space for myself as well.
Exactly.
Because we are connected. That's why when, for example, when a large amount of the population experiences gender-based violence in general goes up. Because we're interconnected. What I'm doing to me, I'm doing to you. When we create, we fire women, and, during COVID, I think like 2.3 million women lost their jobs. How much did crime go up after that? Because that woman is the same one who is feeding that boy who now has to, go into a life of crime to bring in money into the family. And so that's why we say at Rainbow that Ubuntu is diversity, equity, inclusion in practice. Because now there's no longer a they. The they does not exist. There's only us. There is only us. And so how can we help us to thrive? By me understanding the contribution that I am making. or the decontribution I'm making when I fold myself, when I don't say, here is my boundary, and I'm unwilling to participate in a toxic work culture. I'm unwilling to be a bystander as women get harassed in the workplace, because I understand my child will go into the same workplace that I watched and didn't make a decision to stand up and say, no. This is not good for anybody. No one is benefiting from this. And like I'm saying, understanding the wealth of intelligence that we have as Africans. You know, the oldest fossil of human bones was found here in the cradle of mankind, meaning that the oldest wisdom sits here, right? And that if we see ourselves as Africans as the mother that can breastfeed the rest of the starving nations, the West is starving. They are They're literally starving. They need Ubuntu. They need, because our barometer of success is money. We think, they are more successful than us. They are bigger than us. But that's just an illusion that we built for ourselves. You know, we always call the West and America the teenagers who are parenting themselves. And the Africans are sitting with all the wisdom and the knowledge that then can help them have a better experience. But because we don't see our value in that way, we sit with this wisdom and it doesn't even benefit us. You know, what happens when a child refuses to breastfeed? That breast gets engorged, the pain that the mother feels because the child is refusing to breastfeed. So we're sitting with all of this abundance, but because it's not flowing into the places that need it, we are experiencing the pain. We are experiencing those engorged breasts that are not nourishing the people that need it.
And I suppose, we all now live in fear because of this economy of scarcity and all of that. And that fear of allowing others to be themselves, because the ego always tells you that you'll be less if someone is more. If we share with more, then I'm going to lack, which again is really just a myth. Because when you look at the economies that are expanding, if you look at China, for instance, they took 80 million people out of poverty because there is no such a thing as lack, right? And we don't hear that those who were privileged, for instance, then suffered because more people came into the fold. So, just talk to us more about this African cosmology. I'm really interested in it because I'm really seeing Africans going back to their roots, trying to find their true identity. Even myself, I find myself wanting to visit in Ntaba zaseQhudeni, umlambo waseThukela, because sisiduko sami eso, which is something that I never cared about before, but because I'm trying to find the African in me who was never allowed to be and to be herself or himself, I'm now interested in all of these things. And I believe that when we function from our authentic self, when we stop this self-abandonment, we're going to be able to give to the world what the world has been missing.
Mm-hmm. So our journey of gaining this confidence again, for me, it started in 2020 when I started conversations with the love activists. Then I wanted to do a self-love course based on what I've learned. And I connected with an ex-client actually, and we came up with this beautiful framework, Jungian, all these beautiful frameworks that are out there. But we sat with all of this and we're like, something is missing. It's missing incasa and the flavor of our Africanness, because that's what's missing. There are many self-love courses out there, but there are none that are rooted in Africanness. At the time, we didn't have the language to say African cosmology. And in a conversation that we were having, my business partner says, I wish that we, could speak to Gogo Rutendo, who is the wisdom keeper of Tato Credo Muta's work, who was a prophet and a philosopher and a playwright, and basically wrote the African Bible. You can put it like that. And somehow we found her number, and they ended up curating a course for us around self-love. And what they said to us is that with African cosmology, we can't give you knowledge. You have to live through it. It has to be something that is in your body, that is a lived experience. And so it started again with an incarnation objective reading, as I had shared with you. And on these higher oracle cards, there's African deities or energies from the African tree of life. And there's a 1 in 4,000 chance you're going to get the card that you end up picking up. And the card that I picked up was Osset. Osset is the divine mother. She is also known as the Great Witch because she fashioned a phallus and impregnated herself. In fact, the story about Jesus of the Immaculate Conception comes from that, comes from Osset's story. Osset, who then had to remember her husband, who was split in 14 pieces. So she's in charge of memory. She's in charge of unifying yourself. She's in charge of birthing yourself as your true, authentic self. And so when I started to see myself in this way, that I come and create a space where people can really show up as themselves, because I first provided for myself. I first collect all my 14 pieces that are scattered all over the place to create that inner unity, then cascaded so much more confidence. Then we discovered about what true Ubuntu really is, and that there is something called Ubuntu thinking, which I can't even go into, but that it's a consolidated way of thinking, that there's segregation, analysis, circumspect. There's all these different ways of thinking that Ubuntu takes when we are moving from thinking with Ubuntu. That there's different kinds of Ntus. Ntu is a prefix for life force, and that there's Bantu, Hantu, Kantu, and they all talk to the life force in different things. So, for example, Hantu is the life force of time and space. And this weekend, I realized, or me and my other business partner from Brabo realized that if we're saying there's Hantu, which is a life force, it means that there's time-space realities that are affecting and infecting this time-space reality that we are in. And we realized that we had left parts of ourselves in an old office where we experienced a lot of toxicity, a lot of financial trauma, a lot of self-abandonment, and that time space is alive. It's imbued with life. And we had to go to that office and do a cord cutting ceremony to say we leave this experience here and no further. It will no longer affect and infect the way we do business today, because we understand how powerfully time and space, literally diversity, equity, inclusion is because of a time and space. It's because you experience something in a time and space where women weren't allowed to be X or men weren't allowed to be Y. And that time space is alive. And that is what we're dealing with or moving with when we are saying that we want a more inclusive space. But we first have to deal with that time-space reality.
Exactly.
And that's what African cosmology brings. It brings such a wealth and abundance of navigating the world, to say that there isn't just one way to do things, that there is an abundance of ways to do things. And the more diverse ways there are, the more flavorful life is. Life is like a dish. Imagine if we only could cook with one ingredient, how disgusting that would be. That's what we're trying to do when we're saying that you must just be this one thing. We're inviting disgust and blandness and grossness in our lives. We deserve the diversity and flavor profile that African cosmology, Western cosmology, all of the cosmologies that exist to make our experience here in this particular time-space reality more fulfilling.
Okay, wow. So I want to move now to this diversity of personality. This is something else that we miss in corporate, to understand that we are all different. We are different personalities. It's not just about race and gender and all of those things, or Western or African culture. As human beings, we come with different personalities. We come with different strengths. And because we have to only allow people to fit into a box, we don't allow people to bring their full selves, their natural gifts, their talents. I had dinner with a mentee of mine, and she said something that shocked me. She's in the financial services space, and she was saying that, managing money didn't make her wake up in the morning, right? I was like, what do you mean? You are in financial services. But she said when she moved into another job within the same company where she was dealing with clients, helping clients design solutions that are fit for themselves, she now wakes up in the morning, she's alive. Why? Because she was denying her own natural gifts and talents. And so you can imagine when you're forcing someone to be in a position where she cannot be her authentic self, you are really just getting half output from that person. When you put that person in a position that is aligned with her own personality, her own gifts and talents, then you're really getting 100% out of that person. So we're going to be saying people are not performing. And demoting people or firing people because we're not allowing them to bring their true selves so that they can function and from their true selves and be happy and be fulfilled and satisfied. Because we're dealing with bosses who can only see themselves, and they want things to be done in the way that they see. And so when for instance, I always have to do things your way, I'm again abandoning myself. And you can imagine, that's why people are so stressed. This boss doesn't appreciate the fact that I'm different. And therefore, we need to meet each other halfway so that we can all be fulfilled, If I always have to do things your way, then I'm the one who's suffering, who's giving and giving and giving, which is why people are stressed and they explode one day and they are tired, of trying always to do things your way because you're not willing to meet me halfway. And therefore, again, performance is affected. And then again, we're giving half of ourselves and the economy is losing, the company is losing, and everybody is losing. Just talk to me around personality diversity. How do we achieve that in corporate?
We achieve it by, first of all, appreciating it, not just tolerating it. Because a lot of the time we tolerate diversity instead of understanding that it is actually the way that we win in the market. By allowing that diversity. That's why our dish will be the most flavorful, because of the fact that it has all these layers of flavor. I'm just thinking of a story that when a woman gets married, an African woman gets married, right? The older women come and tell you that the woman holds the sharp end of the knife and all these different really scary and quite oppressive things. And when I started to think about that, and the resistance that these women would bring if you were to say, I need my husband to, clean the house or help me with the children, and the resistance that those people's mothers would have, it's because they have suffered through, how dare you think that you have the right not to suffer as well?
Exactly.
And that is so confronting that, so I could have said something to change things. I had the responsibility to change things and chose not to. That's a very confronting thing to sit with. And so I rather we all suffer again. Let the suffering continue, Just like I suffered, now you will suffer. Just like I suffered under my boss, you are also going to suffer under me. And we just continue this cycle of not letting diversity in, because the thing that made me suffer is that I, as your boss, couldn't show up as my true authentic self. So how dare you think you have the right to show up as your true authentic self? And so I think as soon as people understand how much safety there is in allowing our differences to shine, that's how a rainbow is created. A rainbow is created because all those different colors in the spectrum are allowed to be what they are. I'm allowed to be magenta. I'm allowed to be cyan. I'm not trying to be yellow, because yellow is being yellow. And if I try to be yellow and the other one tries to be yellow, then there is no rainbow, because there's no diversity in the way that those colors are shining through.
Wow.
And so as soon as we understand how much we're losing out, how much blandness we are creating by trying to keep things a particular way, we only make hot dogs here. We can't make burgers.
Exactly.
Or pies or pizza or whatever the case is. Then we get surprised when our customers are like, we're tired of hot dogs here. Yo, we cannot. If I have to deal with another hot dog, I'll die. Really big and something else.
Wow. Yeah, again, still on the subject of personality. For instance, I grew up a quiet child, and my mother, who was a matriarch, was really concerned about this quiet child, feeling that scared that I'm not going to make it in life. And as a result, I grew up with a low self-esteem because of that. And it was out of finding myself. And I remember saying that I will never allow anybody again to define who I am when I found myself. So even when during apartheid South Africa, for instance, I never allowed anybody to define who I am. As a result, I never allowed myself to be, oppressed as a woman in the workplace because of that. But where I'm going to is this whole issue of not understanding those different personalities. Like others maybe more extroverts, others maybe introverts, and I watch this in these spaces. So people are discriminated against because they are quiet, and we don't understand that they may be quiet, but there are other gifts and talents that they bring to the workplace that we're missing out on because we've judged them to be quiet and therefore define them to be not intelligent, not smart enough to occupy certain positions. And because they are treated like this, they fold into their shell more and more and more, and therefore we dismiss them. And we look at those who are talkative and more extroverted, and when you look at their performance, they get away with a lot because, their personality is always the one that is received. We don't even notice that actually they are not performing. And so we again miss out in not embracing all the personalities. You need the talkative ones, you need the quiet ones, you need those ones who work well by being themselves, for instance, all by themselves. Yes, you also need to be aware that you can't just lock yourself in a room and work all by yourself, because you have to be a team. So you have to tap into the other aspect of yourself also, so that you can contribute more in the workplace. But how do we then, embrace everybody, and not discriminate against people just because of their personality, which I've noticed a lot in the workplace?
A lot of the time also we don't understand ourselves and our personalities. And so, like as an extroverted person, you think it's your job to fill in the gaps, in the silences. You don't know how to sit with discomfort. And so you just think that you're there to fill up space, For example, when you shared with me that your awareness of the fact that you are an introvert, and that you get energized by going replenishing with quiet time, less sensory stimuli, and then you can fill up your tank and be able to then engage and communicate from a replenished point of view. If you don't know that about yourself, right, that I can't just be in board meetings back to back to back and then not carve out time for myself because I need to recharge my battery, how then can you show up? You'll show up by going more into your own shell, right? If as a person who's extroverted, understand that as much as I get energized by being around other people, not everyone is like that. And so how can I create space for others to also feel recharged by my presence? How do I affect situations? How does my personality show up that maybe creates people to go into their shell and not feel safe enough to express themselves? So I would say first and foremost, it goes into, do you know your own personality? Do you know the weaknesses of your personalities and the strengths of your personalities, so that you can lean in and be aware when the weakness is the one that's coming out at the front? Like, oh, Chule, you've been talking on and on and on and on and on. When was the last time you heard someone else's voice? Can you give enough space? Because I understand that's a weakness of my extroverted personality. But without that awareness, then we cannot embrace. We cannot embrace without awareness.
And it's not only the introverts who have to identify their weaknesses and try to, compensate. The extroverted ones, although they get away with a lot, what I've noticed about them is that, first of all, they don't listen. And when you don't listen, you miss a lot, right? And I've also noticed that because they don't listen to other people, they are always talking, right? They don't understand people. Because if you will understand people through talking, right? If you don't give the introverts, time to also speak, because when they start speaking, the extroverts come in, finishing the sentence and going on and on, talking and talking and talking. So you don't get to understand the other person. So you're working with people you don't understand because you're always the one who's talking. And you don't take instructions, actually, from even your boss, because you're always talking and you miss a lot of things and you make a lot of mistakes. And you're always going to be fighting with your boss because you are always talking. You don't stop to listen. And because you don't stop to listen, you miss out on a lot of what was said. Then you present to the boss something that has gaps because you're always talking and not listening. And then you work with people who don't understand. Because you don't ever listen to them, because you're the one who's always talking. I share in my book, for instance, Awaken to My True Self, which in chapter 5 of that book, you'll find where I really delve into this thing of personality diversity. I share a situation where I came to a place with a friend where I was really exhausted by this relationship. And I was trying to find out what is bothering me. And I found that this friend is always talking, and I get exhausted from this. I have to put in a little word here and a little word in between sentences and so on. Then when I asked the friend about, he happened to be a man, when I asked the friend about myself, do you know this about me? No, he didn't know. Do you know this about me? He didn't know, because he's never been listening to me. And so what kind of friendship is this? Because you don't know anything about me. I know a lot about you, and so on. So everybody has to deal with their weaknesses. It's not just the quiet ones, the talkative ones also have to deal with their weaknesses. And so we need to create those spaces where people are allowed to be their true selves. Women are allowed to be themselves. Men are allowed to be themselves also, because, again, as we're saying, those with more feminine energy are rejected in those spaces, and we're missing out on the creativity that they bring to the workplace. Black people must be allowed to be themselves and not be expected to fit into the stereotype of a black person, because we are missing creativity. And we're missing on them bringing their full selves and reaching their full potential. And so they're bringing half the performance in the workplace because they're not allowed to be themselves. And I'm excited about this journey that we've started as Awakened with this podcast, because, let's start talking about these things, sharing our experiences. And as we talk, we're going to start to see a change when we grow in self-awareness and bring a different aspect of yourself into the workplace. We're going to see more healthier workspaces, more healthier homes, and a healthier nation.
Exactly.
Your last words. Is there anything around this space of diversity and inclusion that you would really want to share with your listeners that we've not spoken about today?
I think a lot of the time in our space, we think it's about blame. We think it's about pointing out how this group has been discriminated against and how wrong this other group is. But when you see things from an interconnected, interrelated, interdependent space, you look at it from a completely different sphere. You look at it okay, we are all members of one family. And yes, there have been members in our family that have misbehaved, but there are also members in our family that have allowed the misbehavior to carry on for much longer than it had to. How would I deal with this in a family situation? How would I approach this human being, not this boss, not this white guy, but this human being that carries so much with them when they interact with me in a particular moment? And so if we can start to humanize each other and humanize ourselves to ourselves, to say, Abraham Hicks says that contrasting experiences are there to create more. When we know what we don't want, we are able to create what we actually do want. What we want is to connect with one another. What we want is to create safety with one another, to bring joy into every area of our lives, not just in compartments, but every area of our lives deserves to have a thread of joy in it, including where we work, especially where we work, So for me, what's exciting is that by bringing my fuller self, that actually as an African, I have solutions that I can bring that are so unique, are so diverse, create accessibility on so many levels and so many dimensions, that it brings a different flavor instead of resistance, or activism. And activism is very important. I'm a love activist. But what I'm saying is that my activism first must come from a place of love. First must come from a place of creating peace, of creating joy. That's what I'm gunning for, that belonging, that Ubuntu, that let us be that village. There's an African saying that says, if the child doesn't feel the warmth of the village, they will burn the village down to feel its warmth. And so let us give each other and gift each other with that warmth so that we stop burning the village down over and over again.
Wow. Thank you so much, Chule, for this conversation. I'm really excited for my listeners to hear this wisdom that you came with into this podcast. So as we say at Awakened, let's take the time to find our true selves so that we can function from our authentic selves. Thank you very much.
Amen to that.